your feet, interlace your fingers, right hand on top of left, behind the knees. Lift your thumbs up into the backs of the knees and squeeze the hands with your legs. I like to lift my elbows and pull them apart, and then we're just going to start by rocking the knees from side to side. And then let the side to side turn into circles. And keeping those feet nice and active, keeping the knees and the ankles together. If you feel like your chin is lifting or your head is moving a lot, just let me know and I'll grab you a pillow from behind your head. Anybody want a pillow? We're able to keep our heads pretty still, necks neutral. And then swapping the direction of the circles, changing the interlacing of the fingers. Again, just stirring up those hips. And then finishing off where we started with a little bit of side to side. And then bring those knees right over your hips, thighs together, legs as close as you can. Bring those arms out beside you. Let the palms face down. Start with halfway to a T. Push the elbows, push the palms and the fingertips down into the floor so you can get the entire circumference of the palms to root. And then really push the fronts of your shoulders, the shoulder heads down into the earth. If the shoulder heads lift up, it goes right into your trapezius muscles. So for fun, lift your shoulder heads up. Notice how that goes right into your trapezius muscles. Take your shoulder heads down. Notice how that releases the traps. Do that one more time. Lift your shoulder heads up and take your shoulder heads down. Then keep those shoulder heads down. Keep the knees and ankles together. Shoulders aren't allowed to lift. And you're going to take your legs from one side to the other. So what's important here is that we keep the shoulder heads down. Keep the shoulders on the floor. The next most important thing is to keep the knees together, so we're starting to wake up our groins. We want to try and keep our thighs as close to our bellies in this movement if possible. It doesn't matter how far you go as long as you're finding those little connections. If it's feeling easy peasy, you can bring your arms up more like a T position. But if that feels too intense for the shoulders, you go back to a halfway to a T. And let's allow the priority today to keep the thighs close to the belly, which means the thighs aren't going to move away from your belly. If you come up and you can straighten your legs a bit without the thighs moving away from the belly, feel free, right? Maybe you keep your knees a little bit bent, or maybe you keep your knees really bent as we go side to side. But keep those thighs nice and close. No shoulder movement. And the next time we come to the right, we're just going to go somewhere to the right where we can hold. Pushing into the right arm, the right fingers, the right palms, rooting the left shoulder, and reaching that left arm out of your shoulder socket. And again, you can bend your knees as much as you need to. It's a lot easier if you bend those knees. You can usually go deeper into the twist with a bent knee. See if you can sink a little deeper without lifting your shoulder. And then when you're ready, inhale to come back up. Exhale to come down to the other side. And again, we're just taking it to where we can hang out. Reaching with the right arm, pushing with the left arm. Both shoulders remain rooted. Bent legs or straight legs, whatever works. And then when you're ready, nice inhale to bring it back up. Bend your knees, right hand on right knee, left hand on left knee. Draw big circles with the knees, knees not staying together. So different type of knee circle. And then see if you can find a neutral pelvis, a lumbar curve as you continue to make these circles. So there's no more movement in the pelvis. And it's like you've got a little balloon in your low back, supporting your low back so that the lumbar curve isn't moving. Change direction with the circles. It's hard to keep the pelvis, do smaller circles. And then elbows on the floor, hands on the pelvis, circles without your hands on the knees, doing your best not to move the pelvis. It's easy, you can straighten out your legs a little bit or a lot as we make circles with the leg bones. The more bent the knees are, the easier it's going to be, but we really want to resist that urge to imprint the low back. It's like there's a little balloon in that low back. Change direction with your leg circles. And then stopping with your leg circles, bend your knees, bring your feet onto the floor. Soles of the feet are going to be flat, knees are going to be apart like a cobbler. If it feels like too much for your knees or your hips, bring the soles of the feet onto the floor. Root into your feet, big toe mounds, baby toe mounds, lift your knees, lower your knees. Almost like a butterfly. Pressing the feet to one another. Good, so toes aren't moving, feet aren't moving. We're just lifting our knees and opening our knees. Good. And then let's lift our knees to hold, as if there was a great big ball between our knees that we were squeezing. Take your fingers, grab your shoulders, all 10 fingers, squeeze your shoulders, root with your elbows, and then make nice big, slow circles with your elbows. And the reason we do so much not brainwasher, this is the thoracic part, is because I'm trying to brainwash you to do it, whenever you think of it. It's the easiest routine, right? There's 3 movements in the basic routine. Circles one way, and everybody change, circles the other way. And then stopping with the circles, elbows come to touch, elbows open. Keep squeezing that imaginary ball between your knees, elbows hit the floor, and like the jumping jack, we go up and down with our elbows. And then let those arms come down onto the floor, let the legs relax, let the knees open, but continue to press into your feet. Now the trick to actually opening up the hips is to use the muscles of closing the legs, and then just think about using those muscles, and then imagine you're pushing your knees open. As you lengthen your groins, your inner groins towards your inner knees. But there has to be the resistance of trying to close the legs, even though they don't close, to push into it to get those hips to release. Hands on the belly. As you inhale, feel the belly lifting, broadening, expanding. As you exhale, feel the belly sinking, shrinking, contracting. Let's take 10 more big, beautiful breaths. Feel free to plant a seed of intention with each and every one of those breaths. When those 10 breaths are complete, we're gonna bring those knees up nice and slow. We're gonna walk the feet so they're hips distance apart. We're gonna bring our arms beside us, pushing into our fingers and our palms. We're gonna imprint the low back, and then we're gonna lift the low back, the mid back, and the upper back up away from the floor as we root our elbows, our shoulders, our palms, and our fingertips down into the earth. I feel like you're imprinting that low back. Big, beautiful breaths. Now see if you can lift up all 10 toes, press your feet down into the floor, and then see if you can bring your big toes down, but all the other toes stay lifted. You might feel it in your arch. A cramp is very common, right? Just breathing here. Imagine that there's a ball between your knees, just like before when we were doing the cobbler pose, and squeeze that imaginary ball. So toe mounds down. So yeah, toe mounds down. Lift all the toes and just try and keep your big toes down. There we go. Let's take 5 more breaths here. When those 5 breaths are complete, you're going to come down one disc, one vertebra at a time. Eventually the pelvis arrives down. You're going to imprint and arch the low back just to get that feeling. And then bring your knees together, your feet together. Cross that right leg nice and tight over the left leg. Fire up your feet. Lift your feet. You can grab your outer thighs or you can interlace your fingers behind your thighs. If it feels like too much, you can put that left foot onto the floor. But holding onto the back of the hamstrings works too. Relax your shoulders. Think about the legs trying to get away from you as they push into your hands, and then use your hands to pull your legs to you. Lift your elbows, pull them apart. Let's start by pointing and flexing both feet. So both feet are pointing and flexing. And then just the left foot is going to start to make circles as the right foot continues to point and flex. And if it's hard, go slower and do one movement at a time. Point, flex, circle. Point, flex, circle. Change direction with the circles. And that's proprioception work. It's really important, and if you absolutely suck at it, it's only going to get better if you practice it. And this is a really easy way to practice it, right? So head down, using your brain, not your eyeballs.
Watching you.
Use your ears, not your eyes. And then fire up your feet. Think about bringing your tailbone down to the earth. Nice, big, beautiful belly breaths. And then release your legs, but keep them where they are. Bring your arms down onto the floor beside you. Push into your elbows, your fingers, your palms. And this is where you get to decide what your core is like, okay? If you know that your core needs work, it's not that strong yet, then you're going to keep your arms here. If you've done quite a bit of core work and you have no neck or shoulder stuff, you're going to interlace your fingers, right hand on top of left, thumbs are going to tap, you're going to lift up your head, put your hands behind your head, and then you're going to pull those elbows so they're as wide as your shoulders. Okay, so this is something that I need you to hear, neutral neck. Now, if you cannot keep your elbows perfectly still, you do not go to the next stage, okay? We're going to exhale to pull the legs to us. We're going to inhale to take the legs away from us. So we exhale to pull the legs to us. We inhale to take the legs away from us. Our head is on the floor and our elbows are not moving at all, right? Our shoulders are stable, which means the arm bones are just right at the shoulder sockets. So the elbows have to be a shoulder's distance apart, right? This isn't a shoulder distance right here. They have to be symmetrical and they have to be not moving. You only have one neck. So most people aren't going to go further, right? But if you feel like you're really nailing the elbows and the shoulders and there's no movement in your elbows and your shoulders, then the next time you pull those legs in, everybody's gonna hold in. Good. Keep the elbows on the shoulders, and then you're gonna lift the head and the shoulders, neck doesn't change, and bring it back down to the floor. The rest of us are just holding the legs in. So the only people that are pushing into the rib cage to lift the elbows are the people that 100% had perfectly symmetrical elbows and the shoulders aren't changing as we lift and lower. The rest of us are just doing great, pulling those legs in as close as we can. Good. And if you're doing the upper back work, you're making 100% sure that there's no change in your neck. And the next time we come up, we're just going to come up and hold. Good. Maybe we put our head back down, maybe we don't. Heel to the floor, thighs to the belly. Heels to the floor, belly to the thighs. Zero movement in the elbows. Can you see that one elbow is quite a bit higher than the other elbow? Opposite. Yeah. So take a look at them and get them really, yeah, there we go, and then pull them apart a little bit. Or, there you go. Nice. So with you, I want you to think, right? I'm going to lift my head by pushing into my rib cage. So I'm just going to take my back ribs, push them down. There you go. And then I'm going to take my elbows, and I'm going to reach them back. Nice. And then lift it up to hold it up. Right? You can put your head down anytime you like, but there's no change in those elbows. Push the back ribs down to come up higher, or to lift those legs higher. And then bring your head down, bring your feet down, uncross your legs. Soles of the feet are going to clap, knees are going to be apart. Let's go 10 big breaths into your belly. And so that using the elbows to stabilize the shoulders is amazing, not only for getting rid of neck and back pain, but it creates a stability that allows us to eventually do inversions. So if inversions are your goal, we usually teach them in the fall. Then you want to do some of these routines so that you know, body's ready for it. And there's lots of inversions. You don't have to take your feet off the floor. Inversions are basically when you get your head below your heart. So good for us, right? Let's go 5 more breaths here. Feel free to plant a seed of intention with each and every one of those 5 breaths. When that's complete, bring those knees up. This time we're going to cross that left leg nice and tight over the right. Lift your feet. You can hold on to the outer thighs, or if you can, interlace your fingers, left hand on top of right. Find resistance. Think about your legs moving away from you. Then use your arms to pull the legs to you. Start by pointing and flexing both feet. And then keep pointing and flexing the left foot as we draw circles with the right. And then change direction with the circles with the right foot. Still pointing and flexing the left, circles with the right. And then stopping with the circles, keep those thighs nice and close. Start by bringing your arms down onto the floor, push into your fingers with your palms. And again, this is such a good place to be, and just working those shoulder heads down, right? So a lot of us are going to stay here. Some of us are going to interlace our fingers, left hand on top of right, thumbs are going to tap. We're going to bring the hands to the back of the skull. We're going to pull those elbows in. Now the trick is to reach the elbows towards the wall behind you, because if I was testing you for a headstand, your elbows would have to be beyond your skull. So part of learning that is to get the arm bones out of the shoulders just right. Elbows are squeezing an imaginary ball, elbows are dropping an imaginary ball. Elbows don't move at all. As you exhale, everybody pulls the thighs to you like someone's foot is on your hamstrings, and then inhale to take the feet away from you. Tap the floor if that's appropriate for your back. Good. Exhale to draw those legs in, lift the sacrum if you can. Inhale to take the legs away from you. And you're lifting the shoulders off the floor. So the shoulders are on the floor. It's like hands are underneath your shoulders, lifting them up. Head stays down. Head down. Yeah, I don't lift the head until we get this straight. So if I look at this, do you see that they're not yet? Bingo. But we want to go out and then out, right? So you're pushing against me. It's interesting. Do you have shoulder pain ever?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. So I want you to try and get these guys symmetrical. This is good learning for you because I'm going to teach you how to get it symmetrical. And the other one we want to do with you is joint stability, which we'll do next week. Push into me. Yeah, there you go. And then push into me. Good, and then push into me. Right, there we go. I'm just breathing into that. And then pull those legs in, and maybe it's enough not to lift your head. A lot of us just pulling in those legs in is enough, but if you want to lift your head, this is the tricky part. I want you to lift your head by pushing your rib cage down. Exhale, inhale, head comes back to the floor. So there's no change in the shoulders. I think of someone with their foot on the inside of my bottom rib, and I push down to come up, and then I inhale back down. So I exhale to push the back rib cage, and then I inhale back down. Otherwise, I'm just here pulling my legs in and breathing deeply because that's good, right? That's a lot of good flexor work. And when I do core, I generally exhale as I come up, and I inhale as I go down. And then exhale to come up and hold up or hold down, but don't move your elbows. Exhale to bring the legs closer. Inhale to take the heel away to tap. Exhale to bring the legs in. Inhale away to tap. Keep those elbows symmetrical. Keep those shoulders stable. Again, anytime you want to, that head can come onto the floor. Fire up those feet. Elbows a little wider, frankly, bloody symmetrical, I must say. All here. It's just where you're weak, which isn't surprising. That's the outer upper quad, right? It's not in your hip flexors, okay? At all? Yeah. And then let your foot come down, let your head come down, release your arms, uncross, soles of the feet together, knees apart. Place your hands on your belly and just breathe. Big inhales, big exhales. That's called Sleepy Cow Core. It's a goodie. I really like that one. Let's take 10 more big breaths here. Feel free to plant a seed of intention with each and every one of those breaths. When those 10 breaths are complete, draw your knees together. Roll off to one side and you're going to stay on that side. So I'm going to give you guys options, okay? So if you have a shoulder injury, like Keith, you're gonna take your block underneath your head. If you don't have a block, I can grab you one in a minute, or you can go grab one. So Carol, you might want a block or a pillow underneath your head, okay? The rest of us, we can have a headstand arm like this, with our hand to the back of the skull and reaching with our elbow, or we can have a straight arm. Usually palm up is more mellow, palm down is more intense. Or the most difficult one would be to have, you see I have my hand at the back of the skull and I'm lifting my head, right? But I've got a very, very strong neck because it's been very trained. If you don't have a strong neck that's trained, you do not want to hold this very long, right? And you have a really good understanding of a neutral neck, and your elbow is super, super active. Otherwise, you can rest it in a headstand position, or you can have a straight arm position, okay? We're gonna bring our thighs up so that our thighs are at a 90-degree angle in our hip flexors. We're going to take our ankles so that our ankles are at a 90-degree angle with our knees, right? So we've got a 90 here and we've got a 90 here. If it becomes too intense on your hip flexors and your booty, you can take your thighs back to a 120 in your hip flexor. Now start by grabbing your top ass and really sitting into that top butt, okay? So this allows you to find a waist on the bottom side. If this butt is lifted, then I'm kind of imprinting my waist on that underside, and it's not going to be nearly as effective. Right? So you want to really sit your butt into a chair. Good. And then you're going to take this hand, you're going to put it on your pelvis, and you're not going to allow your pelvis to move. Your elbow is going to point back, but you're going to keep your shoulders lifted. If you start to twist, I'm going to make you bring the arm out in front of you. But I want you to see if you can keep your elbow still with your hand on your pelvis, okay? We're going to lift that top leg, and we're going to start to draw circles with that top leg. If you can't see me, it's better if you position yourself on your mat so that you can. It'll make it a lot easier. Your bottom leg is rooted, and it's pushing and reaching. So it's pushing into the floor, and it's reaching forward. Good. Change direction with your circles, right? Elbow not moving on either arm, right? And you can be doing whatever version you like, but the neck feels fabulous. The shoulder feels good. Nice. And then stopping with the circles, we're going to go forward and back, keeping the knee at a 90-degree angle, keeping the pelvis and the elbow from moving. And as I go back, I have to kick my bottom knee forward. So I'm reaching with my bottom knee forward. It's harder. Usually we use an outrigger, but you know what? Sometimes it's good to go out in the ocean without an outrigger. It's a little more exciting. Good. Take that foot back. So again, forward and back, forward and back. Good. And the next time we take it back, we're going to take it back to hold. And I want you to think, I'm going to lengthen my quad towards my knee, and I'm going to push my knee into an imaginary stool or wall. My bottom leg is going to root, and I'm going to kick my bottom calf forward to keep me balanced. My pelvis is level, and then I'm going to imprint my low back as much as I can, pulling my belly towards my back. Maybe I can grab my ankle or my foot. If I feel my knee, I go back to strengthening, getting as much of a bend as I can. Good. But if I can grab my foot, I'm going to kick. If I can't grab my foot, I'm going to think about kicking without the foot moving. I'm going to think about a stick in the back of my knee, and I'm going to lengthen the back of my knee away from the crown of my head. If I'm kicking and I still feel fabulous, I'm going to pull my heel towards my butt, and if I still feel good, I'm going to take my quad back. Still imprinting my low back. Everybody's breathing. Bring your knee down just a tiny bit so your knee's level with your hip. Most people have to bring their knee down. There you go. So if I'm up here, I'm just stretching the inner knee, which isn't optimal because most people get overstretched on their inner knee. We're tweaky, right? We get a lot of, want it even. And then just breathing here, holding. This is a good pose for TV, bed, whatever, the beach. That deep quad stretch. But the trick is to imprint your low back. We did all that imprint warm up. That's how we get deep into that quad. Let's go 10 more breaths here. You could do this standing on one foot too, right? But I find if you're lying on your side, you're way more likely to be able to imprint, so you're going to get that deeper quad stretch. And the imprinting isn't actually imprinting, it's bringing your pelvis to neutral. It's just the habit here in this type of a back bend is to have an overarch in our pelvis. Pull the belly towards the back. And then when those breaths are complete, you're going to straighten out that leg. Bring your hand onto your pelvis. See if it's still level, hip over hip. If you need an outrigger, get an outrigger, which means you bring your hand in front of you and you reach with your elbow. Go up and down with that right leg, toes and knees pointing straight. And you can go slow or fast, but let's start with zero rotation, which means the knee and the toe is pointing forward. Good. And then internally rotate, so the toe points down, the heel points up, and go up and down. And we're not moving at the ankle, which is tempting, and as we come up, we're not losing the rotation. I want you to think of a screwdriver right inside that hip, okay? This is the nemesis to a hip replacement. Internal rotation strengthening. Good. And then bring it down, externally rotate, and go up and down without moving the pelvis. And the foot will come a little bit forward most likely. But just see what you can do. Good work, everybody. Prop free. Good, and then bring it back to level with the hip, zero rotation. Take that foot as far back as you can. Reach the bottom knee forward. Take that foot back, 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 back. Feel like someone's foot is on your sacrum, root that sacrum forward. If you need to reach forward, as sure as heck help. Take your right arm, reach it forward if you need to go further back. Feel that burn. And then swing that leg forward, nice and slow. Go to a place where you can hold it for 10 breaths, hovering, right? And it might be here. Higher. Lift it so that it's as high as your outer hip. So I could put a tray between your ankle and your hip and it would be level. I said 10 breaths, I think. Humbling, right? Strong hips are probably more important than flexible hips, if I'm being totally honest. And then nice and slow, bring that foot down. Good. Now slide your hand down your leg towards your ankle. Good stuff. If you want more, straighten the bottom leg. So Keith, do you need more? Don't straighten the bottom leg. Just keep that bottom leg bent. Because when you straighten, you lose all of this. So if you don't need more, you just keep that bottom leg bent. Yeah. Or you come into like a scissor kick on your side. And then this hand, find a little bit of an outrigger, reach with the elbow, and then just drag that hip back for the IT band stretch, right? So it's like you take that top side of the pelvis and you take it back, right? And it gives you a little bit more IT band stretch. Does anyone feel that? Yeah. Yes, I take that. I take the oh Jesus as a yes. And I love this because you don't even need a strap or a leash at the park, right? Like you just could be at the beach and you could have done a big hike or whatever, top of a mountain. 10 days in on the West Coast Trail, whatever trail is 10 days in, and you don't need a damn thing. But it can be really effective, and the longer you hold it, the better. And if you did both sides, you'd end up with a hell of a tan. And if you wanted it to be a little more shoulders, you could bring this arm up. I like to start like a zombie and swing it up. Maybe your hands could touch. Maybe you have to bend your elbow. That's gentler. Straighter arm is more intense. And then you can breathe into that whole side. It could be bent. It could be straight. It doesn't have to be that high. But I like to go kind of shoulders height, sweep it up, find a spot. And if you want less, you bend the bottom leg. You still want less, you lower or bend the top leg. But the more you kind of twist into that pelvis, the more it's going to be IT bend. So it's essentially this, right? Look familiar? We do it all the time. This is the pregnant lady way. But it's also the make you use your muscles way and don't fall asleep way. Let's go 10 more breaths here. When those 10 breaths are complete, nice inhale, stretch that arm out of the body as you bring it up and over like a rainbow. Beautiful. And then bend your bottom leg if you straightened it, bend your top leg if you straightened it. Stack your knees and just let that release. And if you can roll over, but if you want to lift yourself up and come to the other side, you can. Again, remember you can put yourself on the other end of the mat, which you can probably see me better than if you roll over in most circumstances. And then you lie on the opposite side and you find the same arm. So if you did a little bit of headstand arm, you did a little bit of this neck training, you do it on both sides the same. If you did a straight arm, palm down, yada, 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 you do it the same. Thighs come to a 90-degree angle, right, with our hips and our belly. Ankles come to a 90-degree angle. Take your left hand onto your butt first, or your top hand, I should say, and sit your booty down into your hand and lift up with your hand. So your butt's pushing into your hand and your hand is pushing into your butt, which is tractioning your low back in a very interesting way and training you to find a neutral pelvis. If you stop doing that, it's like your waist kind of pushes into the floor and you get a bigger waist on the top side. So try not to do that. Find the bottom waist and lengthen on the top side. Good. Then place your hand on your pelvis, reach with your elbow. Try to not let the elbow or the pelvis move as you lift that top leg, and let's start to do circles with it. And so elbow, pelvis, shoulder, ribs, not moving. Bottom leg has to be real active. So we're just stirring up our hips. If you need an outrigger, grab an outrigger. No harm in that. But either way, your elbow's not moving. If your elbow's moving, your neck and your traps are probably overworking and your shoulders getting tweaked. Change direction with your circles. Remember, you can rest whenever you need to, and the circles don't have to be so big. But I want to see nice active feet. And then stopping with the circles, ankles, knees, and hips at a hip's height. I'm just swinging back and forth like a pendulum with the knee bent to a 90, elbow not moving, pelvis not moving. The next time you take the foot back to hold. Push your foot into an imaginary wall. Imprint your low back, and instantly that changes everything. Pull your belly towards your back. If it's available, grab your foot. Right? If you don't have your foot, it's just what you need to do to get that knee strong. You just hold it there before you stretch it, right? If you've got the foot and the knee feels fabulous, you kick into the foot. If you don't have the foot, you think about kicking into the foot. If you had to lift the knee, you bring the knee back down so that the outer knee is not higher than the outer hip. Nice. A visual that helps me is I put a stick in the back of my knee crease, and I imagine that that stick is being pulled towards the kneecap, but the kneecap is pushing back onto that stick, and it gives you this really nice knee release. And then if I'm still happy, I take my heel towards my butt, and if I'm still happy, I take my quad back without my pelvis or my shoulder moving. But you've got to find that imprint. That's where that magic is. You imagine there's a floor on your low back, and you're trying to push your low back into that floor. And the bottom leg stays really strong, just as strong as the upper leg. It's like there's a stick in the back of that knee too, and it's moving towards the kneecap. Let's go 10 big breaths. No twist in the shoulders or the pelvis. You guys are looking real good. This series is called Butt Kicker. And then releasing the foot, nice and slow, straighten out that leg so it's straight, ankle, knee, and hip level. Bring the outrigger forward if you like, or keep your hand on your pelvis as you go up and down with 0 rotation. 0 twist in the shoulder, 0 movement in your elbow. Right, so 0 rotation means toes and knees point forward. And then we bring it down to a hips height, and we're going to internally rotate it from inside the hip. So it's not an ankle movement. The ankle stays the same, but we internally rotate like a screwdriver, and then we go up and down, keeping that internal rotation. Even if it's a small movement, your hip will be grateful that you did it. So the whole knee and ankle point down. Good. And then we save the easiest for last. Go to neutral, externally rotate, and go up and down. The foot will probably come a little bit forward, and it's probably easier for most of us. Does anyone find external rotation harder? A single person? Anybody? Anybody?
I do.
Who said I do? Gotcha.
I mean, I find it.
Yeah, but I'm curious. I find that interesting. Yeah. I like information. And then bring it back to neutral, good stuff, and reach that left leg back or top leg back as far as you can. And here, if you kind of get stuck, you could bring your outrigger, even if it's a shoulder's height, right? And reach with your top arm to take that foot further back. And this is a really good muscle to strengthen. So like a zombie, Keith, bring it towards your neighbor in front of you. Or an outrigger, or just keep your hand on your pelvis. Nice, and then super slow, slide that leg forward, and then find a place where you can hold it for 10 breaths at a hip height. Sitting that booty into a chair, hold it. And then when those 10 breaths are complete, place the foot down, but keep it nice and active. Take a few breaths there into that top hip. And maybe you go deeper by straightening that bottom leg like a scissor kick. Slide that left hand down your leg, top hand down your leg. And then if you wanted to go deeper, you would take the pelvis back on that top side and drag the leg to you to get a little bit of a twist in that top pelvis. But just do what works. And bring it down there, Keith. That's far enough. Yeah. If it can come to the floor, great. If not, no worries. And just breathing into it. If you want to add the arm, you can bring it to a shoulder's height, right? And like you're drawing a moon, you sweep it up. You can bend the elbow at any point. Otherwise, you can just bring it to stack the hand. You get a little bit of a squeezing into your head. And then I try to stretch my top hip flexor away from my armpit. And then big breaths. 10, is that getting into your Artida?
But the, like the strengthening, that does really help.
It's really a state. It's nice for the nerves, right? Like for the Artida, well, the sciatic nerve. It teaches us about overstretching too, right? Because if we're not engaging and we're stretching, particularly if we've got an injury, then it's too much of a good thing. So it's an active IT-bend stretch. Which is good, like especially if you've done a run or you're gonna run, right? Let's go some big, big breaths here. Let's go 10 more, right into that side body. 10 breaths are complete, lift your arms with the shoulders height, bend your elbow if you need to, and then sweep that arm through like a jumping jack. Nice. And then bend your bottom leg, bend your top leg, stack those knees, take a couple breaths. And then push yourself up. So we're going to come into tabletop position. Our toes are going to be tucked, and we're going to bring our weight back. And we're going to start with our hands right in front of our knees. So wrists are finicky, okay? And they're like knees, we just don't want to twist them off, right? And so this is pretty hard to hear sometimes, but there's a couple ingredients. One is I really don't want you to go past a 3 out of 10 sensation. Chandra, can you move? And number 2, the base of your index has to be down. So if I'm lifting the base of my index and I can slide my finger underneath the index, that's not good. So we're going to have our hands by our knees, and we're going to have our hands as wide as our shoulders. So really close to our knees and as wide as our shoulders. Good. So the entire palm is down. Good. And then bang out a couple shoulder push-ups. Right? So if I've got my arm bones in and I can't turn my neck, then that's a lot of weight in my wrist. You can probably feel that in this position that's not risky. It's like, oh right, my wrists are taking the weight. Whereas if I find my shoulders and I take my arm bones out, it takes the weight out of my wrists. So that's an important ingredient, that my arm bones are placed just right inside my shoulders. And then I'm going to internally and externally rotate my arms. Right? So there's a range here. A lot of us hyperextend the elbows, which means they're forward and kind of popping out. A few of us internally rotate, especially if we're mousers, like people that use mouses a lot. Right? So we want to be in between. Right? So we don't want to be all the way open, we don't want to be all the way closed. We want to be in the middle and ideally symmetrical, so the elbow creases are making a V. And there's a little mini bend. And then you're going to pick up one hand and you're going to flip the wrist so that the palm faces forward. And then you just check in. Can I bend my elbow, right? Can I keep my shoulders? And if you can't, you can go to thumb forward, middle finger out. Good, and again, we don't want to go past a 3. Now if that's comfortable, then you can start to bring the hand forward and the butt forward, but we're not going past a 3, and you're moving very slowly. So you're way fast, and you have a sensitive wrist, right? Am I wrong? Am I remembering correctly? So just do a little less, and I want to see you bend the elbow. Can you bend the elbow? Good, and you don't have a sensitive wrist, then I'm less worried about it. So you want to keep a little bit of a bend in the elbow, and you bring it to where you can keep a 90-degree angle, right? So I want to keep it pretty bent at a 90-degree angle, but I want to be able to bend. So can you bend a little more? A little bit? And then from here, you just get to the side, right? You can have more weight into that left hand, you can have more weight in that right hand, and then you just start to do little circles, but you're keeping those shoulders stable. Believe it or not, this is one of my favorite neck releases. Right? But if I'm all heavy on my wrist, it's too much. I have to lift up out of those shoulders, finding those marshmallow shoulder stick ratios just right. And then change direction with the circles. Remember, we're looking for 3. We're going to take it a little past a 3 once we get warmed up. This one you can't do on the sand. You have to have a firm surface. This is no longer a beach yoga class. And then stopping with those circles. And again, listen to your body and just come back. Okay, without lifting the palm. And we're looking for maybe a 4 or 5 here. There should be never any pain. And the entire palm is down, the fingers are down, everybody's breathing. Just feel the difference between your right neck and your left neck. And then breathe into your neck, your shoulder, and just notice which one's easier to breathe into. And there's no right and no wrong. It's just like, some people have their, they're in elementary school yoga, some people are PhD yoga. It's all good. Doesn't matter. But just see what you notice, because until you learn it, you don't know it. And you know it when you know it. Let's go 5 more breaths here. Just noticing the difference between the 2 sides, breathing into that space. And then coming forward, nice and slow. Bring the weight into the left hand, push into the left fingers, pick up that right hand, rotate it so the fingers point forward. Good. Find your hands down. Puppy pose, right? Keep the external rotation of the upper arm, internal rotation of the lower arm so those palms are level. Maybe a down dog pose, but really observe the difference between the right collarbone, the left collarbone, the right shoulder, the left shoulder, and then all the way from the shoulder down to the fingers. And then nice big inhales, big exhales. Remember, we don't want to do a down dog if we have tweaky shoulders. There's just no purpose. Better to train those puppy dogs so that the down dogs don't bite. Is it just in my brain or is it easier to breathe into your right shoulder? Does anybody notice that? You notice it? If you don't feel it, it's not wrong. It's just mind-body connection. Just go 3 more breaths. And then drop down onto your knees. Take your butt back, take your hands back. Make sure the hands are as wide as the shoulders, right? That's an important part. Push into the palms, push into the fingers, bang out some shoulder push-ups here to remind yourself how important it is. That's another key ingredient to releasing our neck. Some of us, one arm bones in, other arm bones out, is a habit. Then our elbows aren't level. And then find just right, flip the left hand. You take it so that either the middle finger points back or the middle finger points out, but the hands are as wide as your shoulders. Little bend in the elbow. And then slowly you're going to move both hands forward. The more weight you put into that left hand, the deeper the stretch, making sure that we're not letting those arm bones come into our shoulders and that we're keeping our elbow bent. And if we have wrist pain, we're going extra slow and doing extra less. Why is the shoulders is important? Push into the entire circumference of the palms and the fingers. So nearly see how your middle finger is pointing out. I like with this one for the nerve release, I either want my wrist level with the top of my mat and do less, or I want my wrist level with the side of my mat. Yeah, either or works. Nice, push into the palms, push into the fingers, keep the bend, and if it's comfy, you start to do little circles, but we're seriously looking for a 3. Push into the palms, push into the fingers. Good. Watch the base of that right index, Margot. Change direction with your circles. And this one's not about going deep at all. It's about how do you get rid of pain. And then stopping with the circles, press into both hands, find your fingers, find the circumference of the palms, and start to bring the shoulders and the hips back, just to where it's comfy. And then just breathe into it. And again, just notice which shoulders you need to breathe into. Just go 5 more breaths. And when those 5 breaths are complete, you're going to come forward. Press a little bit more into the right hand. Lift up that left hand. Internally rotate it back to neutral. Middle finger points forward. Find your fingers in your palms. Take your seat back. Find a nice puppy pose. Maybe you find a down dog pose. Breathe into your shoulders. deep breath. Maybe you walk those feet to one another if you're in a down dog pose. Maybe you lift one leg up without shifting the pelvis. Right, so the pelvis is level, you get that nice T-band stretch. Straight spine, and maybe you lift the other leg. And I like heels down in this season, right? Sometimes I'm really working on stabilizing the ankles, but we've done so much ankle stability lately. I think it's good to stretch out those Achilles. If you need to lift the heel, lift the heel. And keeping the pelvis level, breathing. And when those sides feel even, bring your feet down, and everybody's going to meet in a child's pose. Big, beautiful breaths. Let's take 5 more breaths here. Feel free to plant a seed of intention with each and every one of those 5 breaths. Nice inhale to come up, back into tabletop position, knees underneath hips, hands as wide as the shoulders, tuck your toes, bring your hands back, right? So this time we're going to take the right hand and we're going to put the back of the right hand on the floor, right? Keeping the hands and shoulders distance apart, and then you're just going to slide that right hand forward to wherever you can comfortably. Right, so my middle finger is pointing back. I've got my left hand kind of close to my knee, wherever it's comfy with the knee bend. I bring my hand back, and then keeping the shoulders kind of level, I slide that wrist forward. Now, a lot of us, we're going to eventually get stuck, right? But some of us might want to come up, want to slide that hand forward a little bit more, right? But this can be intense, so listen to your body. Keeping the shoulders level, lifting the ribs, lifting the belly. Back of the hand down. Go a little bit from side to side if you want to. I don't go past forearm at a 90. I can come forward into a proper table, but that's a lot. And then stop with it neutral, push into the opposite hand, flip, bring that hand down, good stuff. Push into the fingers in the palms, bring your seat back, good. Slide your hands back to your knees, left hand comes behind you, palm facing up, good. Keeping one hand on the floor and just slide that left hand forward, keeping the elbow straight. Mini micro bend, but straight. And eventually you get to a point where you stop, or watch that you don't have the weight in the back of that wrist, move your hand forward, slide it forward a little more, just go to a place that's comfy, make sure you're pushing into the hand that's not folded. Again, then get to a place that feels good. You can rock it if you want to rock it or not, totally up to you. Try and have a straighter elbow if you can. Tiny mini micro bend, but fairly straight. So mouse work, right? It can be really hard on our neck, our shoulders, our wrists. Especially if we're really flexible. And if this stuff is really hard, you want to start to look at your wrinkles in your wrists in life, too, right? Like we might have a habitual this in life or a habitual that in life. And then stop with that wrist pretty neutral, push into your hand that's not on the floor, flip the opposite hand, fingers down, palms down. One more puppy pose or one more down dog pose. If you want to do a leg lift, go for it. And just breathing here, pressing into both feet. Again, there's no sway from hand to hand, there's no sway from shoulder to shoulder, whether you're doing a puppy or a dog. If you're doing a puppy, you can do a puppy with a leg lift too, right? No harm in that. But the trick is the pelvis doesn't move and the weight doesn't move in the hands. If you're doing any type of lift, you count the sides so that they're even for you. And then when that's complete for you, one last dog pose. Swap the hands to the left hand on top, relax your shoulders and breathe. And hands underneath the shoulders, nice inhale to push yourself up. In tabletop position, hands as wide as shoulders, knees at least as wide as hips. Take your hands to your knees, lift your knees. Get your feet on the floor, hands quite close to your feet. Bend your knees as much as you can. Hands come onto the knees. Bend your knees, straighten your arms, right? So we gotta train ourselves how to lift. Right, then arms are straight, knees are bent, then we just push into those legs to come up. Good, shoulders back, heart center lifts. So from here, we're gonna imprint our low back. We're gonna have our thighs touching, shoulders back, hands on the hips. So this strong imprint is super, super handy. Good. We're then gonna inhale to lift our heels up and see if we can hold, trying to keep those elbows back. Fixing our gaze on one point, really imprinting your low back. Imprint, pull your belly back. And exhale to drop those heels. Inhale to bring your arms up, keeping your arms at shoulders distance apart. Lean your back rib cage back, just like when you're doing that core. Fix your gaze, lift your heels up. Thighs touching, fix your gaze. Beautiful. Try not to get Willy Wonka ankles. And exhale to drop your heels. Keep your arms up, keep reaching out, bend your knees, take your right foot slightly back, lift your right foot up. Nice. Now imagine there's a stick in the back of your knee, stretch your knee down to the floor, pull in your belly, bring that right arm, externally rotate it, maybe grab the inside of the ankle or the outside of the ankle, but think of the external rotation even if you grab the outside, right? If you can't grab, probably best to keep both arms up for balance, right? So if you can't grab, you can keep the hand down or you can bring it up, okay? You bring your knee back in if you lifted it so that the knee is level with the floor. You kick your foot into your hand, you imprint your low back, and if you're going further and you've got that foot, you just kick that foot into your hand as you come forward. Do your absolute best not to move the gaze. Nice. So, the arm is just a little bit come down, release the arm, and go this way. Yeah, okay, there you go. So it's like you're hitchhiking. Nice, let's go 3 more breaths here. So the thumb is pointing up in that external rotation with the arm. Lost my gaze. And then to come out of it, we just kick a little harder with the foot and we release. Let both arms come down, palms forward. Walk your feet so they're hips distance apart, a little bit of bend in the knee. So when the arm comes up, we bring it down to grab the foot. It's an external rotation, thumb pointing back, as opposed to an internal rotation, which is more tricky, right? So if we're grabbing the inside of the foot, thumb points down. If we're grabbing the outside of the foot, thumb points down. If we're grabbing the inside of the foot, thumb points back. But we have to externally rotate, like we're hitchhiking, right? We're not gonna go, not looking for a ride, we're looking for a ride, right?
Snake, grab it this way?
Exactly, you had it.
Okay.
Yeah. What's that show? Was it that cowgirl when, anyway, that girl had the big thumbs? What was that show? I'll think of it. Thighs touching, shoulders back, right? Uma Thurman was in it? I can't remember. Bend your knees, good stuff. Hands on hips, elbows back, fix your gaze, try not to move your elbows, lift your heels. Fixing your gaze. Good. Exhale to drop the heels down. Pull in your belly, imprint, bring those arms up like a zombie to a Superman. Pull in your belly, lift your heels, fix your gaze. Good, bring your heels down. Nice. Pick up that left knee, left heel, move the left knee back, lift up that left foot. And this isn't a bad place to stay. Imprint your low back, bring that left arm down, thumb pointing up. Keep the external rotation as you grab from the inside, right? Or the outside. But if it's outside, the thumb's gonna point down. If it's the inside, you keep the rotation. Good, and thumb points up. Lift up, imprint your low back, reach the back of the knee to the floor, make sure the knee's in line with the hip and it's not out here, and then you just kick with your hand. Like you kick, kick, kick into that hand, and you think about someone putting their foot into the back of both hamstrings, and the quads push into the hamstrings. And you just reach, reach, reach as you kick, kick, kick. It's a lot of lifting the quad. Keep your gaze on one point. Level your knee. Good, you guys. Keep lengthening the quad towards the attachment point at the knee where we put our hands when we come up. 5 more breaths. And then kick a little harder with your foot to steer yourself out. Release. Palms forward, shoulders back. Find your breath. And then when you're ready, thighs together, feet together, hands on the hip, bend your knees, take the right foot back, pick up your right foot, grab your right foot from the outside or externally rotate, grab from the inside. But either way, you're externally rotating at the shoulder. Fix your gaze on one point, find a really heavy back of the right knee, inhale to bring that left arm up. It's a lot of backhanding, right? Like you're pushing your back of the hand into the floor, and then just think, I'm gonna reach my wrist and my knee away from one another as I kick. Right, and then just keep lifting your quad, pushing into your quad, definitely a little bend in the knee. Try to level out the pelvis if you can. If the eyes move, it's trickier. Nice. Everybody's breathing. Lift up the back of your hand, lift up the arm, and then kick harder to come out. Arrive, feet and hips distance apart, palms forward. Take a few breaths. Slow down your heart rate by slowing down your breath. See if you can find that imprint in your low back here where you're pulling your belly in and you're thinking about imprinting your low back into an imaginary floor. Bring those thighs to touch, hands on hips, bend your knees, take your left foot back, bend your left knee, grab the ankle from the inside, outside, ankle or foot, both works. Nice, inhale to bring that right arm up. Reach and extend with that right arm, bend the standing leg, and start to kick. You're reaching the wrist away from the back knee. Think about that left hip bone bringing down into a table. The more level the pelvis, the more the back will allow you to go deeper. And if you're just working on balance, just work on that balance, either hands on hips or arms up, whatever's easiest for you. And give me 5 more breaths. And then you kick harder with the foot to come out, you release, feet to hips distance, knees are bent, and breathe. And so there's lots of different ways to do this, right? I'm giving you variations just so you figure out what's easiest for you. Let's do my favorite. Thighs touching, inhale to bring both arms up, pull in your belly, imprint. Bend your knee, take your right foot back, lift that foot. Again, kind of like you're cleaning a clock, you bring your arm behind, you grab the inside or the outside of the foot or the ankle, and you kick, 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 kick. Third time lucky. On that third one, you go to your deepest right away, and you hold. On 1 and 2, you kind of take it slow. Try and find all those muscles. And then you kick harder to come out, you release. Broaden your nostrils like a bowl, slow down your heart rate. And then when you're ready, thighs touch, imprint your low back. Nice inhale to bring your arms up. Bend your knees, take your left foot back, pulling both arms out of the shoulder socket, sweep your arm, take your foot, level your knee, reach with the limbs, and then kick. It's a lot of all that we've done, leaning into the back rib cage. Think of all the butt kicker muscles. Nice, you guys. Lift the foot, Keith. There you go. Reach and lift. Like you could fly. If you're trying to fly, get and take off like Superman. There you go. And then kick with your foot to come out. Good job. And breathe. And with your feet at hip distance apart, slide your hands down to your knees. See how that feels. Take your knees back, take your booty back. If your back feels good and it can be straight, you can come down onto your elbows. Again, you can straighten your legs here if you want to, but you want to keep your belly kind of close to your thighs. You don't want to hunch your back. You could grab your ankles if you wanted to. You want to take your hands underneath your feet. It's fingers pointing towards the toes. You slide one hand under. I like to get my toes right up to my wrist. I slide my other hands under. I only do that if I'm not hunching, and then I'm going to straighten my legs a bit. And you can be just on the fingers if you wanted to. I like to try and get my toes right up to my wrists. And then you just think about sliding your butt up a wall. Maybe micro bend in your knees. The thighs come forward. Let your head dangle if you can. Otherwise, you still have your elbows on your knees. You're just working it here or here. All are good options. And just find your breath. And this is an inversion, right? This is getting your head below your heart. I don't think it's 100% what the yogis meant when they mean inversion, but it is many people's interpretation, and it is head below your heart. 10 more big breaths here. I like to bring my weight into my toes and kind of use my toes to release my fingers or my wrists. But be mindful that can bring the weight forward and that can be putting you with balance. And then when you're ready, you can lift both feet at the same time or one foot at one time, other foot at the other time. Hands come to the knees, bend the knees, straighten out those arms. Imprint an arch or go back, just because this is magic. Remember that we can do this wherever we are, anytime we want, anytime our back and our pelvis get jammy. Half height gets really good, you guys. I do this so much when I ski, just because the weight of the skis and knees and pelvis gets kind of cranky. And if your hands are right where the kneecap meets the quad, extra brownie points. And then from here, we're going to come down onto the floor. You're going to bring one hand down, other hand down. We're going to walk it out. We're going to end with one more inversion. So elbows on the floor, knees underneath the hips. Almost feels like a bit of an angry kitty back. Keep your elbows right underneath those shoulders. Lift those knees as much as you like. Elbows don't go wider than the shoulders. Walk it in if you want. If you want to do full extension, you can, as long as that's appropriate. Just a single leg lift here is really nice. With pitch, I always do a heel lifted because you're never going to come up with a flat foot. But a single leg lift with time, as you can see, you can just kind of get the other leg to lift. But you make sure you do both sides. Pelvis stays totally level. And it's just a matter of finding the balance and lifting your quad. Or not. And then when that's complete, you can either roll over into a squat from that position. If your knees don't like that, you can take your feet out, hands out, come into a squat from this position. And we're just going to do a little bit of groin release either here or my favorite groin release, which is the crab walk. Right? And the more you keep those elbows stable, the more release you're going to get through your spine and your pelvis. So you're either here, and you can do it like this, right? Or you're in a squat. But either way, we're not feeling our knees. And our feet are nice and active. Right, so it's heel up, sole up. It's a Barbie foot and a cobbler foot. Right, and if you get your elbows down, it's going to be even deeper. If you want to do a bind, because those are appropriate, make sure you do it even on the two sides. When that feels like you've had enough, you're going to come down onto your back, knees together, feet together, nice C with the spine to come down. Let's take a few breaths in happy baby. So we're going to bring our knees up, take our knees as wide as our rib cage. See if you can lift your ankles up so they're over your knees. And you either hold the backs of the knees, the calves, or the heels or the ankles, but you want to have the shins straight. Right? So you want to have your ankles right over your knees, just like you would in a lunge. And then push your feet towards the floor, pull down with your hands wherever they're at, and try to bring your tailbone a little closer to the earth. As if you're trying to go into a little bit of a back bend. Now look at your big toe mounts. Can you level up your feet? Your knees are pointing out to the side, your feet are pointing out to the side like a V. Remember what it was like to kind of squeeze your knees closed, as if there was a ball between your knees? Do that. Remember we started with that cobbler, and then we lifted the knees like we were trying to squeeze a ball. See if you can find that same action or muscles of squeezing your knees a little bit. And then release your feet. One foot comes down, other foot comes down, one foot to the floor, other foot to the floor. Let the knees touch, walk your feet apart for one last snowplow, pigeon toe your feet. Give me 5 big belly breaths, complete with mantras. deep wrist work. So if you feel your wrists tomorrow, hot Epsom salts bath, hot, cold, or my personal favorite is you take a towel, you wrap it in cod liver oil, you throw it in the microwave so it's nice and hot, you wrap your wrists, and then you wrap it with saran wrap. That's obviously quite labor intensive, so hot, cold is easier. But cod liver oil is amazing. All right, heel toe your feet in, relax your shoulders, straighten out your legs, and if you feel like you need a bolster, because you feel your knees or your back, just bend your knees and I'll grab you a bolster. Otherwise, close your eyes, let your whole body relax, and breathe. And what I find interesting is there's many types of people, but often there's two types that come to yoga. There's people that have been physically active and people that have not been physically active. And what I find is with the physically active people, they push themselves quite hard and the sensation doesn't scare them, whereas if they're not physically active and they feel sensation the next day, it kind of scares people. And just remember that we probably feel our bodies like, it's okay to feel your body after a yoga class, particularly like lactic acid releases, and so it feels like, oh yeah, But even wrists and joints, occasionally we're gonna feel them a little bit after class. I don't want to feel my body for 3 days. That's kind of my general figure it out rule because I'm not in India, right? I don't have all the time in the world to do yoga. I have other shit to do. So I find that if I feel my body for a day or two, I personally like that. But if I don't want to feel my body for a day or two, I just do less, right? Go less deep in the poses. Just take it a little bit easier. Both are great options. But feeling your body shouldn't be a scary thing. My teacher in India says, and it's more the psychological stuff I think he's talking about than the physical stuff, although he kicks my ass so hard I can't even walk upstairs by the end of the day. But he says it hurts to heal. And it's really, really hard work. Keeping in mind, if you do feel your wrists, let me know because I'd love to do some more weight bearing stuff, and it's good to know where you are, right? We don't want any pain in the wrists. So just figuring out if you can do more, if you should be doing a little less, based on what you feel the next day and the next day and the next day. And then walk your feet towards your seat, roll off to one side, push yourself up. Let's come to a nice, comfy, seated position. Hands coming into Namaskar. Let's end with 3 Oms. So we're going to go low Om, medium Om, high Om before we dedicate the merit of our practice. Om. Maybe use this class to be mindful of the words of Swami Vivekananda. 1 ounce of practice is worth 10,000 tons of big talk. Thank you so much for joining me today and sharing that practice. Namaste. Thanks, everybody. And thanks for being nice to Fran while I was away. I didn't hear any bad stories, so that's good. We had a really nice trip.